Over the last month, we have been talking all about differentiation and what you need to do. But the real question so many of you are asking is how? Like, I know the what, but how am I supposed to find the time to do this? There is so much on your plate as a teacher, especially a secondary science teacher. I'm sure everyone would argue with everybody on this. Like, an elementary school teacher would fight me on this, but I genuinely feel like there's no harder role as a teacher than being a secondary science one. Like, you have all the responsibilities that all these other teachers have, plus you have all of the labs. And then if you're a secondary science teacher, you're most likely, every high school teacher has all these extra responsibilities too. The clubs you sponsor, the sports you coach, it's just so much. Now, y'all know I'm a big fan of outsourcing. I talk about this all the time. There's so many different ways you can do it, but it's particularly curriculum design, unless you're like me and that's your passion is writing the curriculum, okay? I think that's a simple way to outsource, use someone else's curriculum, and then that frees you up to have more time for differentiation. But what if you need even more help? Because we all need all the help, am I right? This is where I think AI is going to be a game changer in education. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you may remember 2 episodes I did last fall with 2 different current high school science teachers. I had Mitch Wieland, and then I also had Elise of Keystone Science, and both of them just shared so many great ways to use AI. But if I'm going to be honest with y'all, which you know I tend to be an open book, I haven't stopped thinking about these conversations, but I've also just been super intimidated. Like, these apps, these AI things, they scare me. I feel so overwhelmed by them. I open up one and immediately I just want to do a comfort Punnett square, you know what I mean, on paper, where I just want to work out a really long stoichiometry problem by hand, just to as almost a grounding technique. I don't know, just the tech can freak me out. I love paper. I love pencil. I'm old school in that way. But I also know that I have to adapt. And maybe if you're listening, you need to too. So I'm going to continue to push myself to explore AI, and I'm going to bring you along for that journey. And so I hope you'll do this with me. And so what's that going to look like? I'm going to continue to find people to bring on this podcast to help us, because I need a lot of help, and I'm not going to even pretend to act like I know what I'm doing here. Also, I feel like AI is just getting smarter. It's continuing to evolve and improve, and so I think we're going to continue to need fresh intel on this. So I'm going to keep sharing what I'm learning as I learn it, hopefully as simply as possible. And so that's going to begin with today's episode. It's going to look like 7 quick wins that I've found as an AI rookie that hopefully you can adopt and use to simplify your teacher life. So 7 quick wins to get started with AI. Are you ready? Let's get into it. This is Secondary Science Simplified, a podcast for secondary science teachers who want to engage their students and simplify their lives. I'm Rebecca Joyner from It's Not Rocket Science. As a high school science teacher turned curriculum writer, I am passionate about helping other science teachers love their jobs, serve their students, and do it all in only 40 hours a week. Are you ready to rock the time you spend in your classroom and actually have a life outside of it? You are in the right place, teacher friend. Let's get to today's episode. Every single win or application I have for you to try today, all 7 of these are all based on information that Elise and Mitch recommended to us back in episodes 154 and 157. So if you never listened to those, go back and give them a listen first. They are the people on the ground here figuring this out, using it with their students right now in their classrooms. They are the inspiration. It's just taken me a few months to work up the courage to really explore all of these things they recommended. And so now I'm just going to be sharing with you really simple things I've learned how to do with all of these resources that they've shared that I think would be helpful for you if you're like, I need some quick wins. I need this to make my life easier. And I don't feel like I have the brain cells to figure it out myself. So that's the hope in today's episode and next week's as well, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. But first, I feel like I need to address The biggest fear or hesitation you may be having, again, if you are anything like me, and it's that AI isn't perfect. Like, it's not a human. It is a robot. So how can it be better than me at doing, X, Y, Z? And I think the first thing I will say is, you know what? It's probably not better than you. But at the same time, you are a finite person. You and I both. We are finite. We are human. We are not robots. We are so limited by capacity, whereas AI isn't. And so, yes, I am confident you could do 90% of the stuff I'm going to mention today, maybe not the first one or two, but you can do most of these things yourself if you had the time and capacity. And you could do it better than AI. But what we're looking for here is not for it to be necessarily better than you, just for it to be more efficient. AI is going to do 80% of the work for you. This is what Elise even mentioned back in her episode. It's going to do 80%, and then all you need to do is a little tweaking on the end, a little 20%. And I love that AI kind of knows it. So one of the applications that both Mitch and Elise told me to check out was Magic School. And I'll link it in the show notes. And when you make a free account with Magic School, a pop-up comes up and it straight up says to you, best practices for AI usage. And it says, check for bias. AI might produce biased or incorrect content. Always double check before sharing with your students. And then it says the 80-20 approach. Use AI for your initial work, but make sure to add your final touch, review for accuracy, contextualize appropriately for that last 20%. It also says too, your judgment matters. Like, see this AI generated content as a starting point, not the final version. And that's the kind of energy I think we need to take into approaching these things. It's going to get you started. Honestly, I think of AI as I think of my own children when I ask them to do anything in my house. Okay. When I ask them to help with any of the labor in the home. Can I do it better than them? Absolutely. Do I have the capacity to do all of these things all of the time? No, I do not. So I'm going to let them come in and give it an 80% effort, a solid passing B effort here. And then I'm going to come in and take it to 100% effort. I'll take it the last 20%. And so that's how I want to encourage you to approach using AI. It's going to be a starting place. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to really do enough for you that then you're going to be able to just finish it off really quickly. Just like how, hey, if my children are cleaning up the kitchen after dinner, they're going to do 80%. I'm still going to have to follow up and wipe the counters. Give the counters one more wipe. You know what I'm saying? I'm still going to have to assess the arrangement of the dishwasher and might have to move a few things that got a little dodgy in there. But that's kind of how I want us to approach this as we now dive into these 7 recommendations that I have for you for how this can truly simplify your life if you're willing to, give it a go. First recommendation, transcripts. Y'all, transcripts of classes. This could be for your absent students. It could be for your English language learners. There's a program called Otter AI that I'm obsessed with. I started seeing other people using it in Zoom calls I was on or meetings I was attending. And I was like, hey, what's going on with that? And then I started investigating it myself, and it's a game changer. You can record your lecture or even an entire class period with this Otter AI, and it will produce a transcript for you. Not only will it make the transcript, it will make a summary for you. Like, it'll give you like the Spark Notes version of what was covered. And then it can also translate that for students. I mean, what a game changer for your absent students. Maybe I have 3 sections of general biology. I'm going to Otter AI one of the sections. And then if you can say, I'll upload it onto our learning management software and you can check it out what you missed, a summary. I mean, such a simple and great application. Will all your students utilize this resource? No, but I think it's just a great idea. I'm especially thinking 2 of my AP biology classes where I feel like there was a lot more dialogue and a lot more back and forth. I was going to say direct instruction. That's what made me a little hesitant. But then I knew like the AP teachers would come at me because we should be doing even more inquiry in AP than the others because they're a higher level. But I'm going to be honest, there was a lot of direct instruction for me when I taught AP Bio. Also, I was a rookie at teaching the course. There was so much I felt like I had to get out there with them. But again, I was hesitant in even using that term because it wasn't like me just blabbing at my students the whole time. It really was a class of dialogue. That was my favorite thing about teaching AP was like, there was so much back and forth with them. Like, even if there was a lot of a direct instruction up front, they were asking so many questions and there was just so much goodness we were learning alongside of each other. And I just look back and like, Otter AI would have been awesome to use in my AP class and record those conversations, have it come up with a summary. And then even I could have referenced that in future years of like, okay, this is what we talked about. These are questions they asked. Here are things to like be mindful of, misconceptions that are going to come up and things like that. That's my first recommendation. A quick, simple way. Download Otter AI on your phone. Start using it for transcripts of your class, for absent students, or translating for ELLs, or maybe recording your AP review sessions. Anything like that I think would be really helpful. My second recommendation is rubrics. I feel like people are always talking to me about rubrics. I have a rubric starter pack in my Secondary Science Simplified course, in the assessments mini course, the unit of that. People are always like, I hate writing rubrics. Y'all, AI can help you so much. Check out Magic School. I will link it in the show notes. It has a rubric creator. You, of course, have to input some information here, and then it will get you going with a rubric. I mean, like for any project you want to do, it also can make choice boards, which I'm obsessed with. I haven't had as much time to play with that as I've wanted to, but student choice is something I think is so important for reaching a variety of learners. And I love the idea of choice boards. And I just never really, honestly, I never had the capacity to really get into it and get creative with that. And so I love the idea of like using Magic School to make rubrics, but also make choice boards for projects to help give students a lot of options. And you just have to input a little bit of information and then tweak it from there. My third recommendation is, oh my goodness, this is such an easy one to get started with too. I think Otter AI is the easiest. I think ChatGPT is number 2, but using ChatGPT or any of these softwares, but I've been messing around with ChatGPT. Again, I'm just like live sharing what I'm doing, you guys. So I'm hoping this is helpful for you to learn as I'm learning. But review materials, extra practice questions for tutoring. When I needed like a bunch of multiple choice questions for a review day or something where we're going to be using whiteboards to do whiteboard review, use ChatGPT. It is a game changer. Here's what I will say. I think ChatGPT at this moment in time that I'm recording this is not good at science. And I don't think it's very good at writing great questions from scratch. Like I will admit back in 2023, some of the first times I was dabbling in ChatGPT was I was going to see if it could help me write some multiple choice questions for my chemistry curriculum. I love writing free response. I hate writing multiple choice. It's so hard to write good multiple choice questions. And even ChatGPT can't. I would give it some information and say, can you write these kinds of questions? And I would go back and forth with it. And I just felt like its questions sucked. So I just went back to my old school, like I'm writing everything myself from scratch. I do think it's improved, but here's where I think it's better now. Take stuff you already have and ask it to upload like this document and say, I want 20 more questions like this. I think it does really well if you give it an exemplar and then ask it to make more of that. So for example, if you have 10 practice questions you're doing in class and then a student comes in for tutoring and they want more, practice with acceleration and velocity questions, go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, we've already done these 10 practice questions. I need more practice questions like this. Can you give me more? And it can come up with some really decent stuff there. Again, I'm still so high maintenance. Like, I don't know if I would use those things directly copy and paste into like a test. But for review, I don't feel like you need like 100% perfect questions and resources. So highly recommend using for review materials that you're trying to create. My fourth recommendation is making multiple versions of your tests. Okay, so maybe you just want to be able to pass out like form A, B, C, D, E, and you want different rearranged, multiple choice, and you want the same free response questions, but you want them to have different numbers. This is such an easy thing for you to like upload your one version and then say, hey, can you make me 3 different versions of this exact same test with the same questions, rearranged or whatever. Even easier, I think it's a little bit tricky to train it on that to do it exactly how you want it to, but even easier is retakes. I know many of you are in schools where you have to have unlimited retakes of tests. You have to let them, if they fail, retake it until they make a 70 or something like that. And writing tests is, again, it's so hard. So for these people in the district who've never taught in a classroom to be like, you have to give them 7 versions of the test if that's what it takes. Like, that's an outrageous request. They have no idea how hard that is to do that fairly and equitably with students. So this is one of those ways where I feel like you give it your 100% on the first test that you write, and then all these other retakes you have to do, you're going to use the passing C+ version that ChatGPT can create. Okay, so You give it your test and say, hey, I need another version of this test to give to students who are retaking it, and go from there. I think that's a great way to use it. Another thing I saw when I was kind of exploring that I haven't gotten a ton into, so I don't know how well I can recommend this, but a lot of people have just been asking me about standards-based assessments or, three-dimensional assessments for the NGSS, that kind of thing. Magic School, which is almost too good to be true. I'm like, what's the catch with Magic School? I don't get it. I'm still trying to find the catch, but it has this insane tool that's called an NGSS 3D assessment writer. And y'all, you put in, I want 3 questions, and you put in the standard, and you can give it a couple other, guidelines. I want something with a data table or whatever, and then it will write you a pretty good assessment. I think it would be a pretty good quiz creator if you want these 3D assessments. You can also, this is a bonus one. I said 7. It's really going to be 9. I don't even know why I said the term 7. I keep thinking of more things. Another thing you can have it do is you can have it come up with some storylines. Here's all this information about what I'm going to be teaching. Here are the standards. Do you have any storyline ideas that I could use? I think that's a great way to be using your AI to make your life easier. Okay, the next one I have, I don't even know why I'm numbering them because I keep just coming up with other ideas as I'm just gabbing with you guys. But the 6th maybe where we're at is video questions. You can go into Magic School and there's a tool where you can link any YouTube video you want. You can link one of my lecture videos. You can link a crash course, a Bozeman Science, a PBS video you find up there, whatever, and say, hey, make some video questions for me. Can you imagine how great that would be for a sub-plan you have to make last minute? That was another one of my tips for you, sub-plan. So call that number 7. Say, hey, here's this movie. My students are going to watch it. Can you write a sub-plan for it with 10 video questions that they're going to answer as they watch? Game over. Maybe if you're doing a flipped classroom and you're like, my students aren't going to really take notes, or maybe you're going to have them do fill in the blank notes while they watch a lecture video, and then have Magic School give you 3 more summary questions that they're going to answer after they watch the YouTube video. That is such a simple way to just save you 20 minutes of time you're going to spend putzing around trying to come up with questions. I absolutely love that feature. Okay, my next tip or recommendation or application you can use for AI is reading level adjustments. Again, this is something I learned from Elise and Mitch, and it's kind of blowing my mind. A couple of different AIs do it, but it's specifically this website called Diffit, which I will link in the show notes. Y'all, you can link a video, you can link an online article, you can upload a PDF. Anyone who uses It's Not Rocket Science resources, y'all, you can upload my discovery stations and select the reading level you need them rewritten on. Isn't that insane? You can say, I need this on a 5th grade reading level, and it will do it for you. I still, my brain's still trying to compute how it can do this and how I've lived so much of my life without it. But that is a game changer if you especially are in a reading level heavy, kind of course. Or I'm thinking specifically too about your ELL students you're trying to serve. Now, my last suggestion for you, I've given you a lot. Okay, so we've talked transcripts of class for absent students or, transcripts you want to translate for your ELLs. We've talked about rubrics, choice boards, review materials, extra practice questions for tutoring sessions. We talked about multiple versions of tests, storyline ideas, video questions from YouTube videos, reading level adjustments, sub-plans. Last one I have for you, and this is the one I'm going to touch on the shortest because I'm still messing with it, if you will, but is student work samples. There's a tool in Magic School that's called exemplar versus non-exemplar responses. And something you can do is you can give it some information and give it a question. I took a screenshot of one of the creative writing projects with the rubric that's in my first unit of my chemistry curriculum, and I just uploaded it with no other information. And it gave me an exemplar, hey, here's a good answer to this prompt, and here's a non-exemplar answer. And was it perfect? No. But I know a lot of you know, we don't always have student work samples. 1, if it's a new project or something we're trying. And 2, if we just never saved one or a student never gave us permission to have one or whatever. So this is just a great way. If you just need some sort of baseline to say this is good or this is not good, you can do this with free response questions. I just think this is such a great tool that's really, really simple. Again, I need to explore it more, but I haven't had time to explore it as much as I had the other suggestions I've had, but I think it's something worth giving a go. So here's my take-home challenge for you. choose one of these things and start exploring. If you want to choose just one app, I recommend ChatGPT first. I think it's like the simplest. It's like you open that website and there's just like one search bar and you type into it. And then you can go back and forth and have a conversation and say like, hey, you need to tweak this, or I need more of this or whatever. But if you want to get a little bit more nuanced here, again, I'll link that Magic School, Diffit, that Otter AI, even Google Translate's doing some crazy stuff nowadays that is so awesome. So those are some things that I would check out, and I'll link in the show notes. And I just want to remind you before I let you go, like, this does take time. I'm going to keep researching too. You're not alone in this. We're in this together. Let's keep exploring. I know this is mid-year and you're like, I don't have time for this. This would be a great thing to put on your summer goal. I like to have one thing I do in the summer to productively use my summer, but really to take off my whole summer, but just know I'm doing one thing to make my next school year easier. Maybe your summer thing, the one thing you kind of explore is utilizing AI and messing around with it more. But I recommend trying one now and getting started, maybe trying one of these ideas I gave you today and seeing how it goes. So you can find links to everything I mentioned in the show notes at itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/episode 173. And I would love it if you haven't left a review yet, if you'd leave a review today, if you've been encouraged to try AI since my interview back in the fall with Elise and Mitch. Let me know if that encouraged you to get started. If you've had any big takeaways, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. All right, teacher friends, that wraps up today's episode. If you're looking for an easy way to start simplifying your life as a secondary science teacher, head to itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/challenge to grab your classroom reset challenge. And guess what? It's totally free. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you here next week. Until then, I'll be rooting for you, teacher friend.